Boom, boom, boom. So, folks, good evening. Happy Thursday. It is May 29th, so of course I have to shout it out. Good luck mixing game 5.
Come on.
Hey, I have to. You're hoping for John Wick 5. I'm hoping for it.
Yeah,
6 and 7.
yeah, so.
So now that I put that in the universe, I had to start it off. I had to start it out right. I had to start it out right. It's important, right? And so I am Chairperson Carl Henry Cesar. I go by Carl. And what we will do is we will go around the room and introduce ourselves, and then we will kick off this committee meeting of the executive committee. So we will go to my left.
Hi, I'm Deborah Vance. I'm the second vice chair.
Oh, yeah.
Hi everyone, I am Ornella Parker. I'm the third vice chair.
Yep.
Hi, everybody. I'm Christopher Brobson. Hi, everyone. I'm Terrell Gray, the no longer freshman.
Congratulations on your graduation.
Appreciate you. So, we doing intros.
Oh, good evening, Florencia Changajita, CB14.
And Secretary of the Executive Committee.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Prime
And
Minister-
so many other
And
things.
co-chair of Community Safety Committee.
Prime Member. Thank you.
Good evening, Kirsten Utala, freshman first day.
Yeah, freshman.
You don't get a locker,
Welcome.
but it's still the good vibes.
Evening, Asma, and first day for board member as well.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Rolanda Telesford Hashtag, now freshman, second meeting ever.
Fantastic. Thank you for coming.
Oh, and I'm Sean Campbell, the District Manager of Community Board 14, and back there is.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah. I'm one of the community coordinators here. I answer the phone when you call.
You do more than answer the phone.
Yes.
Thank you for saying that, right? Yes, there's more than that. Yes, correct.
And then Patricia Olander is the other staff member here, so we're a small but mighty staff of 3.
Exactly. And so what we are now going to do is, as you saw on the agenda, there's 3 things. So the first part of the agenda is the new member orientation, right? And actually we have another person who's joined us. And so Dawn Marie, could you please introduce yourself to the group?
Don Walker, board member.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so yes, right now we're in the new member orientation part, right? And so what you have up here is the CB14 website, and we are going to be taking a little bit of a tour of the website just because some of the things that we'll be talking about as part of your orientation, it's a reminder that the website is an important resource to use. And some of those things can be found there. And also it's a good resource to point people to as well. And so that's why we have this here. And so the first thing is, as you can see, we have our URL. Whatever, if you don't have it as a favorite, you could do that, you know, whatever your favorite browser is, whether it's Edge, DuckDuckGo, Chrome, whatever. If you just search like Brooklyn Community Board 14, it should come up. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is you see all of those tabs that we have up there, right? There's a ton of different resources and things available that are there. And so Sean is going in the back because the first thing that I would like to point people to is, okay, sweet. So the first thing is you see here in about CB14, there's all that information. So we won't go through every individual tab, but what I encourage all of you to do is after tonight's meeting, take some time, just play around on the website and start clicking around.
I do want to click on a few things now, if we could.
Please do. Let's do it.
Because it's great for the new board members and it's not bad for our veteran board members, just as a reminder. Because I get a lot of calls and I'm like, well, it is on the website and I don't want you to know that just, you're welcome to call even if it's on the website. This isn't meant to say like, don't bother us. But also just as a reminder that it's a resource and it's a really sort of vibrant resource. It gets updated pretty much every single day. And so the more you use it as a resource, I think the more you will turn other people in the community onto it. So when we'll skip the About Brooklyn Community Board 14 because that's our description, 2.9 square miles, comprised of one of the most diverse districts in the entire city. But if we could look at the the board members, if you're wondering who's on what committee and the name of board members, if you scroll down, you're all already on there. So if you want to see your name in lights, and then the committees, and of course, that will be updated. And actually, we already sent you committee preference forms. You can fill them out as soon as you're able, as soon as you know. If you don't know, you don't have to yet. But the sooner you do it, the sooner we have all of them, the sooner we'll put those committees together. And then if you're trying to figure out which committees you're interested in, you can go by the sound of the title, you might just know, but you can look back at old meetings, previous meetings, you'll see the agendas. Ooh, that sounds interesting, you can read the meeting. So check that out, and then if you scroll down a little bit more, you'll notice this is sort of unique to our community district. We have regions, and so we sort of subdivided it's only 2.9 square miles, but now it's divided into 4 regions, and we, work to make sure that there's enough representation in every region, since a lot of our stuff is the physical district. It's good to have representation from each physical pocket of the physical district. So there's that, and there's, regional chairs I try to stay in communication with. So that's the district and the board members. Thanks, Sarah. Back to the tab. The bylaws you should all review, but we won't look at them now. Well, we can, there they are.
So quick thing, we won't go in them in depth, but this is the stuff where this is basically the document that states how Brooklyn CB14 operates, right? So basically, the city charter says how New York City operates, and it mentions community boards. The city charter does not say how CB14 is supposed to operate. This is the document we have that says how we operate, right? So this is the thing that talks about like committee attendance and the powers that I as a chairperson have and the expectations that you as a board member have. That's where all that stuff is. So that's definitely some stuff for the new board members. Make some time to read it. And then for those of us who've been here before, like we definitely review it from time to time just to keep ourselves abreast of it.
Do you want to emphasize that board members can't represent themselves as board members unless?
Yes. And so, for example, one of the parts that are in the bylaws is that, so for me as chairperson, one of my responsibilities is that anytime there's like a media request, then I as chairperson, I do have the right to speak on behalf of the board. However, board members themselves do not have the right to represent Community Board 14. So what that means is, for example, let's say like you went to one of the public hearings on the Charter Revision Commission, right? Me going up there, I could go up there and say, hey, my name is Carl Henry Cesar. I am chairperson of CB14 and I'm speaking on behalf of the board. I have that right? Asma, if you went there and you said, hi, I'm Asma, I am a member of Community Board 14, and then you started testifying, that would put you in danger of going against our bylaws because you did not specify that while you are a board member, you were speaking just as an individual. So that's what that means, right? So if you're going to testify about something, I would say like, yeah, definitely just state, yes, I am a board member, but then be clear. I'm telling you that I'm a board member, but I'm also letting you know that I'm speaking solely as an individual, right? Like that's the key thing. You say afterwards, I'm only speaking as an individual, then you have no way of it being confused that you were speaking on behalf of the board.
And social media posts too, your social media handle should not identify you as a board member. It then looks as though you are commenting on behalf of the board, and comments on behalf of the board either have to go through the full board process, or have to come from the chair or from somebody the chair has appointed to speak on behalf of the board. So some of it is gray area. Just try to always be clear.
You have a question? Yes.
So like our LinkedIn, could we put that we're a community board 14 member?
Yeah.
Technically. Not.
Yeah, I think it's more like the Twitter, it's like,
The handle.
yeah. It's unclear. Is it clear that it's unclear?
It's clear that, yeah.
Very good. What else do we want to, if you could go on the about CB14, Sarah? The city budget process is something that we're involved in, so take take time to kind of, there's a lot there. It is very text heavy, but kind of just look at what it gives you the explanation of the budget process and where we weigh in and stuff like that. So take some time to review that. We're going to be having public hearings on the budget as early as September, probably more like October, but very early. We're going to hit the ground running with budget stuff. So if you want to know more about the process, look at that. If you have any questions, call me because it's one of my favorite things. I love talking about the budget and our role in it. And related to that, if you could click down another to where's the district need statement?
That's within the city budget.
Oh,
Right.
So here we go. Yeah.
that is a really important document. That is the priorities that have been identified through this office, through community input, through all of our meetings. It is kind of the values of this board. And as a member of something, you should know its values. And so any input you have on that document, and you don't have to read the whole thing, although you might want to, it's riveting. But if there's a section of it that sort of jives with your interest and kind of with the committee that you might be interested in, really tease that one out, and take a look, and all input is welcome. It's a really ugly document too. And those of you who've been on the board for a minute or two have heard me say it, but for those of you who know that I just hate this platform. Department of City Planning invented this platform about 6 years ago. Before that, we did a really pretty document. And we're working with them to improve this, but I might actually go off track this year and go back to our document. I have a commitment from Department of City Planning that they'll still post up our document, even if we don't go through their portal. But then there's other complications, so I might suffer through it another year. But that's hideous. I would never publish that. Just so you know. All right. But the content is good.
And so far, we've been saying a lot, right? And so are there any additional questions about some of the things that we've clicked on? We also have some other people who joined us. And so for the folks who came in, please introduce yourselves to the group. And Rosen, are you comfortable there? Do you want to come up here or?
Yeah, we'll just sit back here so we're.
Okay, no worries. We got.
See and hear everything.
Okay, cool. Got to say, we got a chair up there and we got some chairs on there if you were comfortable and want to come up. So, okay, Rosen.
Thank you very much.
Definitely. Cool.
Hi, I'm Alexa,
New member.
new member.
Nice to meet you. And then Benjamin, we saw you.
Hey, you.
Executive committee member.
Yes, upgrade.
Yeah.
New and improved.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. And so, yeah, so are there no additional questions, I guess, regarding some of the stuff that we've gone over so far? So then, if not, so then just in terms of expectations as board members, right? And so one of the key things to understand is that the district office is open year round except for like federal holidays, basically, right? And so the community board calendar is September through June. So what this means is the June general board meeting that we will have on June 9th, that will be our last general board meeting. We as a board, well,
We have one more this year. We have transportation committee on the 11th. That's unusual.
true, that's a committee meeting with the general.
True, yes.
Right, and so as a board, we will not be meeting in July, we will not be meeting in August, but we will meet in September because our calendar is September through June, right? The district office is still running year round, so the district office will be open in July, in August, September, the whole thing, right? So the reason this matters is because in terms of attendance, the bare minimum is that board members, right, we are expected to attend the general board meetings, right? And then on top of that, you were assigned to a committee, and our bylaws, right, that document that you guys will read on your own time, right? The bylaws state that our committees have to meet 3 times during the year, right? And so what this means is whatever committee you are a part of, unless there was some reason you could not attend, you would be expected to attend those committee meetings. So what this means is, as a board member, your minimum number of board-related activities to attend would be 12. And the reason I say the minimum is because you do have some board members who like to attend other committee meetings outside of their own committee, right? And so I'm putting that there just because another one of the things in the bylaws that is stated is that if a board member misses a certain number of consecutive like obligations, then a chair does come out, then a letter does get sent from me letting them know about that. So it's not a snap fang letter, but it is a letter that says, hey, just so you know, I'm sweet, right? There's some bark, but it's sweet, right? It's like peppermint stuff. And so basically it does say like, hey, just so you know, you've missed this many, right? Please let us know what the situation is so we can rectify that, right? But I'm just telling you at the bare minimum what your attendance expectations are, and also for like the full clarity, again, you saw where the bylaws are, right? Like go in that document and read the bylaws, because it also states there, like what the minimum is expected of you in terms of your attendance.
And can I add to that?
Yes, please.
Some committees meet more than others, so if this is part of your calculation, kind of look at last year's schedule. You can click on, when you go to committees, Sarah, can you go there? You can click on any committee, and I think it gives you the lineup of the meetings that they've had in the past year. So you can kind of get a sense of what your sort of like other obligations would be. Because you have to come to every board meeting. You have to come to the public, you're expected at every board meeting. You're expected at, see, this is what you were talking about when I get salty.
Yeah, you see.
And you are expected at all your committee meetings, and it's 3 at minimum, according to the bylaws. Some of them are more. And then you're welcome and even encouraged to go to all of the other committee meetings. I just want to say, you're in a room with some heavy hitters. Deborah, Ornella, Florencia, Don Marie, those are like, I think they over 20 meetings this past year.
Oh.
You just realized it, right?
No wonder I'm exhausted. Yes, but consider that, be honest with yourself, like what other pressures do you have in your life, and how many meetings, extra meetings do you have room for? Because you don't want, even though they're nice letters from Carl, they're not like, you're doing a great job. You got something. All right, thanks.
Anytime, thank you for that. Sure, and so before we go to the next part, which is Sean just giving a little bit of a overview of exactly what the district office does, are there any additional questions from folks regarding some of the things that I was talking about, that Sean and I were talking about?
Cool.
Okay, cool.
Awesome.
Yep.
Service delivery?
Yes.
So the community board is the liaison between all city agencies and all community members. Residents, people who work here, people who have significant interest in the area. It is very complaint driven. So when we pick up the phone, the person on the other end is often somebody who's been frustrated by their efforts to rectify the thing on their own. And so that's my way of saying, when you call, try to be really nice. But also do try to bring things to our attention. A lot of times I get a call from a board member like, sorry to bother you, or this is what we do. It's not bothering us, it's helping us. So be our eyes and ears. If you're talking to somebody, you can call on their behalf, but also encourage them to interact with us directly and let us know what's going on. And we work very closely. We talk to our sanitation garage probably every single day. We talk to the police precinct most days. But we'll also take complaints about them and, work with them to try to rectify what's going on with our community partners. And we tend to get, like, I think our sanitation garage is like second to none. It just never had a problem that they didn't say, well, get right out there. But it's a huge operation. So there's something every day that they've got to get right out there, to address. What else do I want? And we use the data, like all of the information that we get. We use that informs that service delivery request. We track it. We have a robust Airtable that we use. We can follow up on it. So you could call 311 on your own, and then maybe your problem gets resolved. But then that's just like that's a data point that we missed. So if we know that you called 311 and we have it in our system, and then it kind of goes with a whole bunch of other people in that area that had a similar problem, now we start being able to tell a data story.
Yeah.
So keep us in the loop. If there's a question about anything we've done, from the board office, give us a call and ask us about it. That if you're calling an elected official's office about something Community Board 14 did, as a Community Board 14 member, it's not a positive light on the board, but also it's not going to get you the most direct answer. We can tell you what we did and why we did it and how we did it. And if we didn't do it as well as we could have, then we could do it better the next time. So please just, we're a pretty open line of communication. And even though I ride around on a pretty high horse, I actually do take criticism. Right? I just did it.
Yeah. This is what we call.
Does that make sense? Did I blather?
And so are there any, so given what Sean was talking about in terms of the role of the community board, and the other thing too is like, as I'm telling people in this room, what we're already aware of, like language matters, right? And there's many nuances and distinctions. So for example, we are members of Community Board 14. This is the Community Board 14 district office. But what we are talking about is that we represent the people who live within Community District 14. Right, so there's a nuance there because the board is comprised of 50 people, but Community District 14 is the area that encompasses like what, 2.5, 2.9?
2.9 square miles, 160,000 residents, 11,237 trees,
Bingo.
54 dead.
Exactly, right? And so that distinction matters, right? So I'm putting that there just because, again, we're not telling you to know all the things today. Like there's a website. We're doing this just because it's a start. We're resources for each other. The district office is a resource for each other, right? But it's just one of those things that as you start to wrap your head around this thing, just know the different ways in which all these things tie together. Okay. And so one of the other things that we're going to go to, which for many of you who came to our last board meeting, you had a wonderful foray into voting and all that was like one of your responsibilities as, yeah, right. So one of your responsibilities as a board member is to vote because one of the main responsibilities of you being a board member is that you are supposed to be representing the people, who live in your neighborhood. And then also you're supposed to be able to think about the voices who are not in the room, but also think about those who are in the room, right? And so when it comes to voting, right, you as a board member, you have 4 options. You can yes, right? You can vote no, you can abstain, and you can also say you're ineligible. So to be clear, when we have a motion, right, and then the motion is seconded, which means that there are at least 2 people who agree that the motion should go forward, that's when those 4 votes come into play, okay? And the first thing is that if someone says they aren't eligible to vote, that is because there is some sort of financial reason that, or some sort of professional reason that excludes them from voting for that. So the reason this is important is because whether it's the secretary or myself or Sean who's doing the counting, people who mark themselves ineligible do not count towards the final tally because they are saying that I am not allowed to vote for a certain reason, okay? So then that means the only people who count are people who say yes, people who say no, or people who abstain. And so for abstentions, those should be rare, right? Like abstentions should be rare because it should be for whatever reason it is, whether you feel you came into a meeting late or the information that you're hearing, you're like, oh man, I just don't feel like I can wrap my head around this. Then that's why you abstain, right? But those hopefully should be rare. And so what does this mean? So like I did a quick diagram here and it's not the best, but I'm going to read it out loud, right? So I'm going to read it to you. So on this table, I have a silly motion that says, do I have a motion to approve purple pants, right? Whatever. And so I have, there it is, exactly, right? So now this motion is on the floor, right? So we are a 50-person board, right? So in the first row, let's say when we count up the votes, 45 people say yes, 45 people and 5 people say no, 0 people abstain, 0 people ineligible. This means that motion carries, okay? So what that means is the board is saying, yes, we approve purple pants. So now let's do the second row. Let's say I put that motion out there. You have a motion to approve purple pants, right? Another board member seconds it. Let's say in this case, 45 people say no, 5 people say yes, 0 people abstain, 0 people ineligible. The motion to approve purple pants does not carry. Okay? So just to be clear, when it comes to voting stuff, you have to explicitly mention the thing that we are voting for. So just because a motion does not pass does not mean we can assume that the converse is true, right? We have to make another motion to explicitly find out what it is we're voting for. So now the next row is where the abstentions come into play, right? So let's say again, there's a motion to approve purple pants, okay? We have 40 people who say yes. We have 5 people who say no. We have 5 abstentions and we have 0 ineligible. That motion still carries because the number of people who said yes is greater than the number of people who said no and abstained, right? So in that example, the 40 yeses is much greater than the sum of the 5 noes and the 5 abstentions, okay? So that's why in that situation, that motion carries. So the fourth example where the abstentions come into play again is, okay, let's change the math, right? So let's say you have a motion to approve purple pants. I have 23 people who say yes. I have 22 who say no. And I have 5 abstentions. That motion does not carry. And that motion does not carry because the 23 people who said yes is less than the sum of the people who said no, which is 22, plus the 5 people who abstained, which is 27. And because in our votes, you need a majority of yeses, that motion does not carry. And so I know it's a silly example with purple pants, right? But I'm trying to break that down to you to explain to you how, for the new board members at least, right? Abstention is not a no, but depending on the math, it can lead to a motion being carried, right?
We'll put the chart on in resources.
Exactly, right? But, and I'm saying this, and this is something I had to say too, because, you know, I was talking with like several board members after the last board meeting because I didn't go through that decision tree map in the general board meeting. I just let the new board members know, hey, like there's 4 ways to vote, right? And so one of the things that I told myself is that, okay, in this new member orientation stuff, when we go through the responsibilities, I wanted to do a little better job just breaking down the role of the abstention and that stuff, right? So again, we're not telling you this is a pop quiz, right? We have a website, so we'll put the resources on there too. But I wanted to give those folks a little bit of a better breakdown in terms of the role of abstentions in that. And so before we go to the next part of the new member orientation, do folks have any questions regarding that breakdown? Ornella?
Yes. Voting question.
Yes.
I try to check the bylaws for it just now.
Mhm.
Our voting is, you said majority, it's not half plus one. Like, how do we define majority?
Sure. And so the majority would be, okay, yes. And so for us, the majority would be, it would be a minimum of like half plus one.
Okay.
Of members present and voting.
Voting, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so like, again, we wouldn't be counting anyone who had marked themselves as
Ineligible,
ineligible.
right.
To vote. Correct.
Yeah, and that's why the abstention should be rare. I mean, in the borough president, I don't know if has he done the orientation?
No, he hasn't said.
So you might, and I certainly don't want to steal this thunder, but you might be told that your abstentions is, the way they sometimes say it is, you know, it's kind of an admission that you didn't do your homework. You know, you have materials to review before a hearing, you have materials to review before the vote. You should be present at the debate. And then you should be and have your thinking cap on, and you're put on the board to make a decision and to sort of carry forth a community-minded opinion. So that's why the abstention should be really rare. And shouldn't be, so there shouldn't be enough of them to really sway any motion. But it does happen from when it's a really, really close vote, it can happen. And it can be totally fair. It just certainly should never be a norm.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so it's all.
Can I say something else about that though too? I
Yeah,
mean,
please.
some of this stuff is complicated with a motion on the table and whether it's seconded and then where the debate happens. And I think we had talked about like, if you abstain to approve and then abstain to disapprove, have you just contradicted yourself? Like it's murky. And I think that we as a board don't have a really strong parliamentary sort of tradition. But it might become a little bit more if anybody here is willing to really take a deep dive into Robert's Rules of Order. I've been talking to Carl and we're working to bring a real live parliamentarian to the board to maybe do like either something at a committee meeting, or maybe we'll do like a board development lunch and learn over the summer. Lots of ideas, but try to bring something forward. But that parliamentarian stuff is, it can be tricky, and for somebody to really know, like, well, you can't really say, there's a motion on the table that either has to be, point of order or point of clarification, like that stuff. It can be in the background. Like I still would hope that we stay sort of jovial as a board and not get too carried away with the sergeant of arms and all of that. But it wouldn't be bad to have a fallback parliamentarian. So,
It would be good, yes.
so think about how rulesy you are and, whether you want to.
Rosine, yeah?
Yes, one question, seeing how we all either live in or work in the district, that we're all voting for things and debating and discussing things, then is it up to each member to self-disclose and decide if they are going to be ineligible to vote for something? Or are there ever guidelines on something like, if you're voting for X, consider being ineligible if any of this applies to you?
It's pretty spelled out, and I'll get the language to you all, because it really is sort of like a real, like either a financial, like, or if you're invested in if you're one of the developers, then clearly that's a conflict of interest, so. Yeah, so it's very spelled out. We'll get the very specific. Ineligible is also unusual. If you work for a city agency and there's something like thinking, this has been you.
For
before-
me,
Yeah,
for housing, I can't be a part of.
But that's murky too. Like, if you're not gonna personally benefit from the decision, you can be. If you think it's like a career, it could look like a career
No,
move
but-
that you,
In our policy,
your agency policy. does
yes,
not
we
like-
can, yeah.
Okay. So if there's ever any question about it, better to, run it. You can ask me before the meeting if something's coming up and you're like, I don't know, I kind of used to work for them, or I have a cousin in, whatever the question might be. And I can run it by either Borough Hall legal or even court counsel, and City Hall.
And so if there's nothing else, the other thing is that we still have like 3 of those orange zoning land use books?
And it's on can we find the zoning? Let's actually go all the way over to,
Well, probably down here.
yeah.
Oh, there it is, even better.
This is the resources for board members, which is under resources. It's down near the bottom. This is the zoning handbook.
Fantastic.
And then you'll also,
So granted, that's before City of Yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
after City of Yes,
I
a
was gonna
lot of
say,
things have
yes,
changed,
they
but in terms of the basic vocabulary, the first couple chapters and use
Is
groups,
that still relevant though?
it's still good. It's just don't try and figure out what you can do in your, R3 with the C overlay. So still very helpful. Read the intro chapters.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, thanks for that. And actually, we're trying to get DCP to come and tell us how City of Yes impacts the zoning as it pertains to our district, but they were a little bit overwhelmed by the concept. That Euler training, that's one that was presented to us before. And there's actually is that also in there, the lunch and learn on land use?
Would that be on our
Why
website?
it is. How did I know?
Oh, look at that.
So we did a lunch and learn back in COVID days, just to go through a number of land use issues. And I love that one. You'll see that it breaks down along different. So if you're more land use, there's something for you. If you're more housing, there's something for you. So check those out.
Yep.
I hope everybody makes good popcorn because there's a lot to watch. And while we're at it, since we're back to the website, can we click on the resources tab again so that you see?
You have to choose one.
Yeah, choose anyone. That's, for community members looking for, we've got housing, we've got tons of stuff there. But, I would be remiss if I didn't say this because Patricia kind of, emphasized the fact that these are things, there's some stuff that's been up there a long time. So this is like what did I say? It's like a vibrant website. If you have resources, if you have things that are updated, get them over to us and they'll go up, within a day or so. That could really use there's a lot of stuff in there that could use some update. So take a look and let us know. Projects. Can we click on projects real quick? That's, stuff that's been presented to the board, stuff that's going on in your community and beyond. Those are the updates that we get. You can search by, if you don't see it on the landing page, you can search by department, you can go DOT. So that's really useful for what's going on, and IBX is up there, stuff like that.
Can I ask you real quick? So they're putting new gas lines in the streets in my part of the area, and the company's called Hallen. I was trying to get a contact number for that, and because I had a situation with it.
Reach out to us and we can try to facilitate a
I'll check
conversation.
in tomorrow.
Yeah, either get you a contact or field the question for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, we're hearing kind of crazy stories about the pipes are brick. They're so old that they're brick.
Well, meaning the
That's the
ones,
sewer.
Oh,
Different
okay.
set of pipes.
the pipes in there's a lot of different, well, they.
what project is your project?
It's National Grid, but
Oh, okay.
Yes.
maybe call tomorrow and I'm happy to.
I will
make
call
that
tomorrow. I
quick.
didn't want to take up a whole lot of time.
No,
but
this
You're
is-
saying if I
This is
saw
kind
you.
of that service delivery thing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay.
Sweet. Trying to think if
We
there's.
do also put street work notices up that we get. We don't get all of them, so
Mhm.
you're like, well, why wasn't this up that we didn't get?
Okay,
And
'cause I
they're
did
not always
look,
the
yeah.
most accurate to date,
Okay.
but if you want to send some, that's fine.
Thank you so much, yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Trying to think, Yes.
Elected officials, can we do that?
Oh, yeah, please do. That's important. Yes.
So, under district, you've got your elected officials. You can look, there's a regular district map. There's where the council districts overlap. And then you can click back to the, state elected officials are there too. Except every once in a while it does that. Don't be alarmed. You can still get to their websites and all of that. We're actually upgrading the platform.
That map was great. The overlays on it.
Yeah, right?
We're working on adding maps. So we used to have the neighborhood association maps up there, so we're kind of doing that. I used to have a community-based, oh, do we have our community-based organizations listed? Under nonprofit roundtable?
I don't think we have a list of them.
Okay, so maybe I'm thinking of the youth,
Yeah.
We have an independent website for the youth conference every year
Yeah.
when that comes around, so that gets uploaded because it's also more externally facing.
Yeah.
We,
This is, okay.
oh, meetings and events, that's, ours and.
Mhm.
And then other community organizations can submit their flyers. Usually they just email it to us, but they can actually also self-upload and then we check it and add it.
Mhm.
So,
Okay. Cool. The only other thing I wanted to mention before we then go to the next part on the agenda, like for the committee meeting, is just a heads up. There'll be an email that goes out to board members. If not tomorrow, then Monday. I need to review some language and stuff. But basically, there's going to be a tour at King's Theater on June 18th, and they will be providing it just to board members. Unfortunately, we can't do board members plus one. It's just board members. Yeah, we did check. It's just board members. But this is something that Sean and I were talking about, where I'm trying to find ways to start building some connections between board members, right? And so, again, this email is gonna go out probably by end of day Monday. But keep an eye out, there will be a tour that King's Theater will be providing on June 18th. And then also, there's gonna be some other summer activities as well. Like one idea I floated with Sean is at some point during the summer, I'm just gonna do like a walk around like Prospect Park. And then if anyone's available during that time, then we would just meet at some location, maybe by like the Parkside entrance. And then just walk and talk, like that's it. And so, just something because for new board members, it is tough with the appointment process. You apply in February, you get appointed around May or so.
Right.
Depending on the timing of the community board calendar, you either attend a May or a June, then it's like, bye.
Right.
And then you come back again in September, and then you're like, who are these people?
You're in my head.
I am in your head because I know you want John Wick 5. And you're hoping that's ballerina. I see you. I see you, right? And so this is just one of so June 18th is happening. Some other stuff in the summer TBD, but just know that whatever this other summer thing is, it is a way for folks who are around just to meet, and let's try and find some natural organic way to just keep some of these connections going, and for those connections that don't exist to start building them. And hopefully that means that when we see each other in September, right, like we can start off like even better than we would, right?
Question about the tour. When you say tour of King's Theater, like they're going to facilitate a tour of the actual like building?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes, it will be a expert-led tour by a King's Theater employee to take you around. It also so happens that night that the Church Flatbush Alliance, the bid, is having movie night that night in the courtyard. So you can do a tour. And I think it's Men in Black, and that starts when the sun goes down, because it's outside in the courtyard. So, and the tour will start at 7, it starts when the sun goes down, so you could do it all, you don't have to.
Tour starts.
7
7.
PM. Email coming your way, maybe even as early as tomorrow.
Yeah.
So,
So keep an eye on that.
and then the other thing that's social in September, we didn't talk about, but I'll say it out loud, is we do an annual reception. And every year that was in June until last year, and then we did it in September instead. And then we kind of liked it because sort of what we were talking about, like the bringing everybody together and then going from there felt a little more natural than saying hi in June and then a long goodbye to September. But that is also an opportunity where we recognize people, our partners and in the community, and give awards to extra special people at the city agencies and some community members. So it's you know, it's a very positive gathering. It's fun, it's catered, cocktails, you know, so it's all good. We'll get that date down fairly soon
Yep.
so that you can hold it.
And so if there are no other questions regarding that, so basically just a quick recap for all the new board members. On behalf of the board, I thank you for joining us. Don't be afraid to use the website as a resource. Don't be afraid to use us as resources, right? And then we have this event coming up on June 18th at King's Theater, which we are so gracious that they're able to provide for us. And then, yes, there'll be some other activity in the summer where we find some kind of low-key way for us to continue building these connections. And then you also got you also got an email, but also a physical copy of your committee reference form. So send that to us as soon as possible, so that way before we kick things off in September, we can let you know what your committee assignments are.
And drop in over the summer just to chit chat, you know.
Remember, the office is open all year round.
Also, my cell phone number, because.
Yeah, you saw it. Yeah, right. Saw that too.
In fairness, I should be looking at Florencia. Because she always
You're good.
shares,
Oh, you're
always shares good wishes with me. So,
It was good.
jot it down or I can email it to you, but this is a number that you can use whenever, and I really mean it. If it's really urgent and you think like, no, it's too late, it's not too late. If it's really too late, I won't have my phone on, it's okay, I'll see it as soon as I see it. But don't hesitate, weekends, evenings, all of that. And it is 347 525 7887. Brian knows too.
That's fine.
It keeps me comfy on my way into work.
Make sure you get to the traffic.
I know, he's like, are you driving safely? Both hands on the wheel, eyes on the road? Yes,
That's
sir.
he's right. That's a valid question. That's a valid question. That's very true.
Question.
Yes.
Took that photograph. I might like it.
I have no idea.
Oh,
I don't know either. Patricia may have pulled it out of like stock photos from something or,
someone here took it.
yeah, it could be. I'll ask Patricia.
Do you have questions?
The committee selection process in the fall, can you just explain that just a little bit? Because I saw on the form it has like first, second, or third kind of like selections. What if you wanted to be on more than one committee? How does that work?
You only get to be on one committee, but the good news is you can go to every single committee meeting available. And you don't get, there's not a whole lot of special treatment, like it's like, sorry, you're not a committee member, you can't speak.
Right.
It's really the only kind of, the fulcrum in this is what you're expected to be at. And that's the committee you're assigned to. But if you participate in any of the others, I think you get pretty equal treatment. Would you say? I agree.
Yeah, so like, for example, let's say, for example, you're like, oh, I love that youth services education libraries committee.
Of course.
You know, I know what you mean. See where you're both are. So let's just say that's your number one, and then housing and land use is number two, right? You would be in that universe, yeah, your committee responsibility would be to attend all of those youth service education library committee meetings. If you were also interested in housing and land use, you could also attend those too. What our committee chair people tend to do is, after people have presented, what they tend to do is to recognize like their committee members who have questions first. You know, give or take, and then after that, if there are non-committee members who have questions, they'll ask them, right? So that's really the only thing that would change. Like Sean said, it wouldn't be like they would say, oh, you're not a committee member.
Are you even on this committee?
Yeah, right. It's like, that's not how.
Why are you here?
Yeah.
Discount that opinion. Yeah, so, and then I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say that Carl really tries to give, especially new members, their first choice, you know, because like, as a welcome gift. But, you know, I can't even think of anybody that's their third choice, sometimes second, because the other thing we really try to do is balance out the community both numerically in terms of demographic representation and in neighborhood representation. And that's tricky because sometimes it's like everybody from one area, this is one committee, and it's like, you gotta break it up teams. But we'll do our very, very best. If you are interested in chairing a committee and you are no longer a freshman on the committee, you have to serve for 1 year before you can chair a committee. So, you know, think about that as your. But volunteer to chair committees, because there's gonna be some movement around as we try to make sure. We're gonna try to make sure, this is something that was started a couple of years ago, trying to make sure that the committees also have a balance in like legacy board members and newer board members, because as term limits hit in 2027, 2028, there's, you know, an effort to make sure that people, you know, that newer board members still have been exposed to, you know, like leadership, roles and different roles on the board.
And knowledge transfer and sharing.
Which was a really good segue.
Yes, it is. And so that concludes the new member orientation part of the conversation. So now we're going to the next part, which is Board 14 practices, specifically committee meetings, public hearings, permits and licenses. And basically this part of it is where, you know, we discussed with our district manager, the way that we operated for this, basically this calendar year. And then we determine, are we fine repeating the same process for next year? Or are there any specific areas where we think we need to tweak or change a process for next year? So that's what this part of this is. And so I'll start. So since it's committee meetings, public hearings, I'll start with committee meetings. And so basically the way that we did committee meetings last year and the way we've done it for several years is basically where Sean and Patricia and Sarah, basically they scheduled those committee meetings as the various city agencies and organizations are available. Right? And then just remember, per our bylaws, we're trying to have each committee meet minimum 3 times a year. So that's the way we've done it for several years. That's the way we've done it this year. There is another way that is possible where it could be those meetings become standing meetings. And then the trade-off with standing meetings is that if those were standing meetings, then if someone were not available, then that meeting would have to be canceled and then a new date would have to be found when that entity is available. And then the other thing too is that if that becomes a standing meeting, then there is a question of shifting the balance of work between what the district office does for scheduling that and also what the committee co-chairs are doing as well too. So that's what we did before. And then this is also an idea that has been floated up some different times in terms of another way to do it for next year. And so I know how I feel personally. My question is, do any board members have any issues with continuing for next year the same way that we did the committee meetings this year? So Gerald, you have a question or?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I hate to use Robert's rules, like, for point of clarification.
Yeah.
So the district office, they're the ones who's scheduling those meetings.
Well, in consultation with the co-chairs of the committee members, so we reach out, sometimes it's because an agency reaches out and the corresponding committee, we just like, we communicate with them like, Department of Youth and Community Service wants to do a presentation, can we schedule a meeting for next month? And so we kind of do it, on an as requested by the city agencies basis. Other times I look and I'm like, oh, holy cow, transportation hasn't met 2 months in a row. Let's get something on the calendar for them. So that's how it's a little bit district office, but also city agency driven, as opposed to just saying every third Tuesday of every third month, the transportation committee shall meet.
So I guess follow-up question, I know it's not only city agencies that present at these meetings, so it's like you're also coordinating with community-based organizations to.
Yeah, and when I said agencies, I meant that.
Okay.
But yeah, whether it's the community-based organizations, city agencies, and I guess that's kind of all that we have.
All right, so I'm so sorry, just with that again, is it the co-chairs that are feeding you? I mean, obviously, housing needs to talk to like HPD or planning, but are the co-chairs feeding you like organizations, like say if they had a connection or say if they have someone who they want to present to their committee, like?
Sometimes, yes, Ornella's done that fairly recently. Yeah, so yes, it's all of the above. It's not,
Okay.
so, and it's not even just the co-chair. It's like a committee member, and it doesn't even have to be like if you work for or are familiar with an organization that is relevant to one of the committees, whether or not it's a committee that you serve on, you can be like, hey, I work for this great nonprofit. I think they'd be good for the Human Services Committee. I'll make an introduction.
Okay.
And that's, that's on all of you. Please do that. Make those connections. It's part of why you're a board member. Does that answer?
No more follow-ups.
Don't apologize, right? Don't apologize. That's why we're here. Don't apologize.
And that's why it's a sort of like iterative process. And that's why I think and that's why, there are other boards that do it this other way. And I will have, this is more city agencies, and they're like, what is your next transportation committee meeting? Like, well, we don't have one scheduled. Why? Oh, because we need to present that. Well, then we will schedule one accordingly. Is kind of how we do it. But other boards might say, well, the transportation committee just met last month, so they won't be meeting again until March. And then they're like, okay, I need to get on that agenda. So that would be the other way to do it.
No, yeah.
I am aligned with the way it is, for varying reasons. I think if we do it monthly, that would then change people's requirements around you need to be present for your committee meeting every month, right? Because that's what the bylaws said that you have to be at your, whatever committee you're assigned to, those monthly meetings. I think that would become a lot for people. I'll speak for myself. That would become a lot for my,
Yeah.
let me speak from and I know there is situations where it might be canceled, but there's not something on the case, but then that makes it really icky, because then you have to like play by ear, like this month are we canceling the meeting? I think we should continue the way we are. My only question, I think, in regards to the way we operated last year, and I don't have the like exact solution for it, is how do we get better at publicizing to the public when the meetings happen? I think that's the only, because I think what that fixes is that someone in the public knows if I want to come to a youth service thing, I know it's every third Thursday of the month. But I like the way it is. I just wonder, how do we then increase public?
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
send go ahead, Francia.
I was also saying, I like the way it is, because, so I have a little reason. Remember when DOT had to present, if we have those standing ones, like there are times when there are time constraints, things that we need
Yeah.
to address. And so
Yeah.
that when,
It's my struggle with it theoretically too. It's like, first of all, like if you don't have an agenda, you end up, and in speaking to my colleagues that do it that way, you know, they were like, yeah, but we cancel half of them or quorum is an issue. And, but just to be fair to the argument on the other point of view, the thinking there was, if I just know that I have to block out every X, you know, every third Tuesday of every other month, then I can plan ahead a little bit better. And I have some sympathy with that, but you can't help that then life is gonna barge in on the second Tuesday of the month, no matter what, you know, so. You know, there's a balance to strike here, but, yeah, but to answer your question too, I don't know how, you know, like. We sent out our newsletter to everybody on our mailing list, so it goes electronically to hundreds of, over 1,000 people, on the mailing list. We've got snail mails as well. We put it on every Link NYC on a regular basis. We've looked into other advertisements like the MTA costs money, but so Link NYC is free. And then for those of you who are in a neighborhood association, blast it out. For those of you who belong to work for or belong to a nonprofit organization that has a listserv, you know, we're putting everybody's flyers on our website. Are they putting our flyer on theirs? Maybe that's another answer to your question that I'll take the onus for. Is like, maybe I gotta like, you know, bug my colleagues, like, could you post this?
And I'll brainstorm a little. I'm just putting it out for the group to figure out how we can get better at that. That was my only pain point.
What were you gonna say, Nikki? You might have.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm new on the board now, but I was a board member 2 years ago, and I think it's been, the first thing is I just want to compliment the staff. Like, I don't think you guys can do more than you do to publicize it. I think you do a great job using every tool at your disposal. I work in the nonprofit space, and I would love, and Sean knows me, I don't suggest things unless I'm willing to help, but like, one thing I would love to talk about with the board, I know that we have committees, and then like sometimes there's like a task force or a working group, but I would love to see something that's more informal, so that it's out, like, that it's almost a system of ambassadors for the board. If every committee had someone who volunteered to be like the communications ambassador, and it was just their job, they can figure out how to do it. They can put posters up in the supermarket, they can make it their mission to post on Facebook, but at least in the space I work in, I think if you have an informal network, it doesn't have to be part of like the governance structure of the board where people are voting and have a formal role, but like if the board had, what I'm saying is the staff does everything they can, they really can't do much more than that unless they start having like a $30,000 social media advertising budget.
Yes, please.
So I think it's really on the board members to come up with some sort of a system, where we serve as ambassadors and have people come out. And I think while Carl and Sean were describing it, I was like, yes, because I sent an email being like, I'd love to help with any engagement activities. I served on the board before the pandemic started, and Sean and I have talked about like the pandemic really hit a lot of the, you used to come to board meetings so that you didn't, someone would notice if you weren't there, right? So I think we need to rebuild a little about that, and it's through informal stuff. So I think I want to compliment the staff. You guys do everything you can do formally. And I think we should brainstorm informal ways as board members that we can help get people to come to meetings. Also make sure they're the right people. I know sometimes people come to board meetings and you feel very frustrated because like they've only seen board meetings in the movies and they don't really understand like what you can accomplish by coming to a community board meeting. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Well, thanks for the kind words, but I'm gonna disagree. Like, I think we just identified something that we could do better. I think if we make our meetings, we do this sort of like newsletter stuff, but we can make a quick flyer out of all of our upcoming meetings and then blast it out to the people whose flyers we post to be like, post our flyers. And then that also, if your idea comes to fruition and there's a communication ambassador putting up flyers in supermarkets, then we have a flyer. So I think that's a good question. And then those are a couple of good answers and we can keep doing more. Asma will think of a good idea pretty soon too.
And so since I don't see, so thank you everyone for this. So since I don't see any more questions or comments, then I think it's safe for me to say that for this upcoming year, we're gonna do the committee meetings just like we do. We're gonna continue as is. And then yes, we're gonna find some better ways to get the messaging out. Okay, so then the second thing too is, this just popped in my head actually, I was reading this stuff. So the second thing too is that, I know we're towards the end of May and that means we don't have much time left in June. So the other thing too is, there's something for the new board members, I don't know if you know this, but there's basically a state law called the Open Meetings Law. And I'm gonna try and summarize this. And so if I mess this up, Benjamin, anyone else, like, correct me. But essentially, the Open Meetings Law, it basically states like, for this kind of deliberative body, it basically states like, what are the avenues in which the group is allowed to meet, and what are the areas in which like the group wouldn't be allowed to meet? And the reason this matters is because when COVID hit, there were some provisions that were added that allowed the group to meet virtually, because before you could only meet in person. And every year that the state budget gets adopted, there's a question of if they change that language or not. And so the way that Community Board 14 has met, we do our general board meetings in person. And that's because we vote and we take action on them. We have done our committee meetings virtually because our committee meetings are where we hear recommendations. We hear like presentations, and then even if we hear recommendations, those recommendations are not actually voted on. We vote on them in our general board meeting, right? And so that's the line that we've been covering. And so as I'm talking out loud, I say this because I'm wondering if we're gonna do the scheduling of committee meetings as is. I'm wondering out loud if this means that if it's possible to do a legal committee meeting basically before the end of June, just to confirm if we still feel the way we've been doing it of keeping the committee meetings virtual.
Yeah.
And the general board meetings in person would still mesh with the I guess the existing open meetings.
We've always just had the legal committee kind of review the language of the law to make sure that everybody's still comfortable that we're operating according to the letter of the law. We are one of the few boards that are holding committee meetings remotely. The language of the law is something like, a meeting has to be held in person. The meeting at which any action is to take place must be held in person and open to the public. There is a hybrid way of doing it, but it's so technical. And in fact, to hold a hybrid meeting, you still need a quorum to be physically present at the place where you're holding it.
Yes.
And so to the extent that then 10 people get to stay home and get to decide who they are, and then they have to have some, I forget what the language is, some like overwhelming, compelling reason. And then like, to protect their privacy, do they have to tell you what that is? I mean, so it just, because it was so picky, we just decided that to comport with open meetings law, we would do fully in person for meetings at which action is taking place, and kind of just exist in the gray area of a non-action committee meeting. And where there've been a couple committee meetings in person where we think there might be a recommendation request for the committee, we can always do it in person. There's nothing keeping us from doing it that way. Otherwise, they're just information shares.
Yep.
And we can have the legal. If any new member is a lawyer, you're automatically on the legal committee.
Yeah.
It's the only way to get on the legal committee. If you're interested, apply to law school, let us know.
The membership's great. There's no t-shirts, no beers.
But you get to review the open meetings law
Yeah,
once a year.
exciting, riveting stuff, very stuff. But yeah, just saying that loud, just because there is a difference between agreeing. I was just drawing a distinction again, an important one nonetheless, of agreeing to keep scheduling next year's committee meetings the same way they are, versus like the overarching architecture in which those meetings are taking place, right? So.
And if anybody's uncomfortable with it, express that so we can bring it,
Yeah.
because we should be able to articulate why we think we're still doing everything according to the law. And also just so when you meet other board members from other boards and they're like, what do you mean? You meet remotely. You can do that. And you're like, well, that's legal, that's success.
Yes.
So this is kind of the opposite. When I understand open meetings law a little better. Thank you so much. Now, Larry, how about like, we're gonna get to know each other, we're gonna run into each other when we're picking up our kids or at a block party, or we all play, some sport on the weekend and run into each other. Is it okay to talk about board matters informally with,
Yeah,
when you meet people around the neighborhood?
yeah.
Rumor has
Yeah.
it, there's a few WhatsApp groups in them.
Okay, good.
I'm not on any of them.
My
so-
thing is, it's like, you're trying to follow the rules and like unwittingly you stumble into some conflict of interest thing that you just didn't understand. So you.
Yeah, Christie, it's a community board, not a secret society.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you.
When you brought up WhatsApp, that's a way to reach out to the communities with the flyers too.
Yeah, true.
A lot of communities utilize WhatsApp for business, which is free, and you can do it from a desktop, and it's easier.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what
we've got our, we've got a little social media, but we can have the WhatsApp to blast about that one.
A lot of older adults don't have social
Yeah.
media, so it's a WhatsApp.
Yeah, we used it a lot with when the Coney Island Avenue show. So Spanish, somebody WhatsApp communication. Yeah, I see, I told you.
So then the other thing I wanted to, so next thing I wanted to talk about too is, I think it would be public hearings, because there's certain public hearings that we do administratively, and then there's other ones that we do in public hearing, right? So, for example, any applications to open up an adult use retail marijuana dispensary, we do those as public hearings. For the Department of Transportation open dining, when those applications come through, we do those during public hearing. I say that because I contrast that with the State Liquor Authority, where we do not do those meetings for public hearings. Those are done administratively. And so I bring that up just because last year, the State Liquor Authority, we did those administratively for any applications regarding falling under the Office of Cannabis Management, and then also the Department of Transportation's open dining. We did those as public hearing.
There's one more that we do administratively, landmarks preservation commission, LPC applications. I'm gonna make a distinction. LPC applications that are individual homeowners who already live in a district that is already landmarked, who are painting their front door purple. Or doing doing whatever to their house, and they have to go through landmarks to get a permit for it. We don't hear those applications. If individual applications are done, we just don't hear them. Unless requested, there's a caveat, unless requested to do so by the relevant neighborhood association. In my 13, maybe 14 years here, we've done that once. We've had one request to do the public hearing to get people an opportunity to speak. So
I think that 1.5 years.
yeah. But a bigger application, like if they were landmarking, a new object, a new building in the district. Or we might hear soon, if there's a part of the district that the whole district is being landmarked, that will go through the public hearing process. But that is another thing that both the State Liquor Authority applications are just done administratively. I confer with the Seven Hill Police Precinct. We usually make no comment on them whatsoever. And then I reserve the option to request that this board hear something. If there is a controversial location, and I just kind of don't want to be hanging out there as the one and we want to pull it into a hearing and let the public opine on it, I can do that, but I haven't. But that is something that the board should decide if you want to keep handling those administratively, if you'd rather bring them to hearing. A decision a couple of years ago was to keep it going the way we did, but people wanted more access to the information. So again, on the website, there's a list of all of the SLAs, and we're going to add the open dining to that too. So you can look at everything and where they're at in their process. And the OCM, because it was a sort of controversial state law and because it was new to our communities, and open dining again, because it was something being added into the community and there was no sort of precedent. I thought that the board should at least hear those until we had established precedents. And I think that, we haven't, they've kind of been very idiosyncratic. So I feel like doing those administratively, there's not enough of a board guideline to go on. So I would encourage you to keep hearing those. And it's not that many compared to some of the boards that are getting like 20 a week.
Yeah, that's true. And so,
Yeah, I was gonna, For the sidewalk cafes, that's not quite the right word. Do you get materials to look at in advance?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, they're supposed to give us, yeah, whether it's a sidewalk cafe or roadway, yes, they're supposed to give us an application.
It's like their schematic.
There's a sketch. kind of.
Yes.
Yeah, and you can walk down to the corner where it is and go, oh, this
Exactly.
will look like that.
Yep, so for example, next Thursday, we have Cafe Madeleine, and they're coming back because the last time we had them, they didn't show up. But Cafe Madeleine, the one right there on Cortelli by East 16th Street, they're coming back, right?
Well, this is the one this is the one on the other side of the street. This is like just the two tables. I can't,
It's like Cafe Madeleine, I'll tell you, and then like you got the Chinese place on the corner.
and sometimes I feel a little bit bad because it's such a benign little application of two tables that are up against the building.
They still
But
need it though.
Well, that one maybe, but some of the other ones are, I mean, sometimes in past years, they've kind of taken over the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more than,
Mm.
it's hard to walk through and stuff. I'm just curious. Thank you.
And so, yes, to answer your question, yes, like they are supposed to send an application. They are supposed to send an application, and that's supposed to include a bunch of things, and some of them include, like, some of them will be the schematics of what they plan to do. Yes. Yep, so just to recap, we talked about a bunch of stuff, and so I'll just go down the list and then we'll just confirm. So like Sean mentioned, for the State Liquor Authority, we've done that administratively, and then like Sean mentioned, she confers with the 7th precinct. And there basically is an option where if there is something that is extremely controversial, then yes, there is a provision basically that enables board input. And so I personally have no problem doing it the same way next year. Do I hear any disagreement with that for the State Liquor Authority, how we handle those applications for next year? Okay. Cool. So that takes care of that. So now we're on to the Office of Cannabis Management, right? So the adult retail use dispensary applications, right? For the past, I want to say, ever since that law was implemented, we've been doing public hearings. And so for next year, I too would be a fan of continuing to do public hearings whenever we receive those applications. Do folks disagree? Okay, so
I
then,
don't disagree. I think eventually
Yeah.
maybe it would be nice to kind of think about what precedent would look like. Because it's something that's accepted in the law, like liquor authority. And
Mhm.
while I totally agree, we're not there yet, maybe kind of setting our eyes on eventually making that a more administrative process.
what a framework would look like then for us, like, okay, that's a very good
we could
point.
maybe bring that to public safety committee and maybe human service.
Like
committee.
dive into it a little more, maybe.
Yeah, just sort of setting out some guidelines or reviewing whether or not there's been an uptick in 311 or 911 calls associated with the, and it just really kind of, correcting any misunderstandings we might have or reinforcing concerns that we've expressed.
Okay, cool, got you, thank you for that. And then for the open dining, same thing with that one, I too am a fan of doing those as public hearings. Any disagreement? Okay. I mean, I'd say the DOT thing's interesting just because there was that article where, things were crazy on their end. And so they did give some people that leeway to put it up without applying, and now they're applying again. But,
Yeah, I mean,
but that's,
crazy on DOTs and it's redundant, but,
that's true. That's true.
the,
But yeah, I'm cool with that too.
I have a question about application materials.
Yes.
And this might be on me, forgive me if it is. I don't feel like I have not seen consistent application materials for either of those. Do you always get them?
What do you mean by
before we have a
consistency?
hearing? Like,
Receiving them?
you always, and then
we
it
always get the application. The
goes
OCM
on.
application isn't really information rich. It's the applicant and their representative
It's
and
just
where
the,
the
like,
thing
basic
is and,
information. Yeah.
checking off a couple of things. So I don't even know if there's a schematic with those. The restaurants are kind of just the operator and a schematic.
Yeah.
One thing that confused this board a couple of meetings ago was there were photographs, but the photographs were just photographs. They're not approved yet, so they can't have the tables out yet. So they weren't current photographs. They were just like during COVID when we were allowed to do it, this is what it looked like. But then people sort of responded to that, like that's what they were proposing to do, and it caused confusion. So I almost think that maybe an applicant shouldn't do that unless it's exactly what it is gonna look like. And we can try to get clarity on that. But that's kind of another question I have is like, when we have the meeting here and the applicants here and we can put it on the screen and everybody can look at it together, that's clearly helpful. But when we hold it there's something to be said for holding the public hearings right in front of the board meeting, because you're all coming anyway, and it saves a night out. And for me, it doesn't matter. I'm already here. We can keep doing them here. But if there's just one, do people feel like they can make a commitment to really look over those materials before the board meeting? So the need to see it on the screen in real time as a group isn't as urgent? Or do you think it really is just helpful to have it on the screen and suss through it as a group?
Because to give a perfect example of that is next Thursday, we have a public hearing and then we have a committee meeting after that. And when Sean and I were talking, we were debating this exact point, right? Where it's like,
If it had just been the public.
if it
hearing,
had just been
seemed
the
like a lot.
public hearing, we would have put that in front of the general board meeting. Because to ask people to come in for maybe 30 minutes,
At almost, yeah.
that wouldn't be as fair as having them come in 30 minutes before, like a meeting that would be like an hour and a half or 2 hours, right? So that's that balance that we're asking people about.
And then the other thing, it's like, it's not a big, like, if you get a special permit document, you know, that those are like, there's a lot of paper and there's schematics, and they're very technical. But the dining out applications, there's not a lot of like, you're not looking at plans or anything really technical.
Okay.
So I don't know, but were you gonna say something about that, Christy?
Yeah.
Just, I guess I'll kind of hold my thoughts until I see one. I'm hearing a schematic, and probably the most important thing as a local person making a decision is for you to, well, first of all, it needs certain rules. You don't get to say, you know, I want red chairs instead of blue chairs, or I want 10 chairs instead of 6 chairs. But you kind of, for me, the most important thing is how it shares the sidewalk in these rooms. So, I guess I'll wait until I've seen some.
Yeah, and you can, you know, check them out on these ones are on the website.
Oh, cool. I'll look it
So
up.
you can see it either through the video or they're attached to.
Yeah, but, and the
If
other is, of
trouble-
course, if it meets the technical requirements, we don't get to add cool stuff to it, right? You're just basically common sensing whether it complies with the rules.
Yeah, I recommend the recommendation being sought from the board is pretty narrow.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to.
But we do, I mean, you know, I'm not shy about pillar, like when we talk about the stuff that's like, there was concern about the ambient noise, given the proximity of residential, we can put that into consideration. It
That's the
doesn't
local
hurt.
input that's valuable.
Sometimes, even though it's not going, look, we're advisory no matter what anyway.
Yeah.
So being on record as having expressed a concern that's community minded never hurts.
Yes.
Exactly. Okay.
All right, that's all of them, right?
Yeah, and then just confirming that for the landmarking, yeah, same next year as we did this year. Yep. So then the only other thing I can think of for the board practice is just a friendly reminder that you all got your transition committee, not transition committee, excuse me, you all got your committee assignment forms. Yes, so definitely fill those out, take your time to think about them and send them to us, so that way we can definitely figure out, like, between now and the summer, which committees to place for them. Definitely. So then I believe then that takes us to the next piece of the agenda. And that is the district manager.
Wait, there are a couple other things on board practices, if I can just touch on them
Oh,
really
yeah, please.
quickly.
I forgot.
We were gonna talk about land use and stuff like that, but that, you know, just really look at the community board and we get in touch with questions. There is a transition committee right now. And so that was set up because of the term limits and, you know, putting some best practices into play. There, you know, we gone back and forth on whether we're going to maintain this ad hoc committee up through the term limit time, or hold it and let those responsibilities become executive committee responsibilities. But there is at least one last, if not, it might not be the last, but I don't know what else you're gonna do, but there is a transition committee meeting following that June 5th public hearing. And one of the ideas is to like really build out, there wasn't like a board member handbook in the past. And some of those resources live on the website, whether we want to like recreate an actual hard copy handbook, that's something we could do, or just make sure that the resources on the website check out with that old handbook. But that's something that I think members with experience and new members alike could really contribute to. Because I've been, parroting this stuff for so long now that it's like second nature. I don't think about, I don't know what you don't know and what would be helpful to have up front. So that's just an idea to try to think that the old book on too. And then one last thing I want to say, the other thing we've talked about is establishing a Friends of Community Board 14. It's something other groups have. I've been talking to Christopher Bromson a lot about this, and Carl, obviously. So that would be a 501c3 that would be attached to our organization. We'll talk more about what it would look like as we tease it out a bit more, but it's something that a lot of community boards in the city do have. Our budget has been flat for 20 years, 2 decades. Over the past 20 years, if you look at the increase in budget for community boards, it's been on average 1.5% a year for the last 20 years. Inflation has been 2.5% per year for the last 20 years. So we are really falling behind. With the only city agency that has never had an increase in headcount. And I won't give you the gory details about how much more headcount money the mayor's office has. Yes, I will. They've like more than doubled their personnel, and they have more than 100% of their 20-year ago budget. DOT is another big growth, DOB another big growth agency, us not so much. So, we're really bumping up against our budget, and it limits. I mean, I had to really beg when you're asking the YMCA to like give you space instead of paying them the already discounted rate that it just feels icky. And so, if we had the Friends of, we could put some funding into that. We could accept funding from other funding from council members. We wouldn't go crazy, but it would support the extracurricular things we do to support. Want to put that out there, because if anybody thinks and feels like it's, the reason why I didn't do it before, one of the big sources of money for these Friends of is every time a film unit opens up in the neighborhood, they call and they're like, who can we give money to? And so now if we had a Friends of, we could say, well, we have a 501c3. And then I feel gross when somebody called and like, this film company their lights are too bright, and I can't do anything about it. I really am very ineffectual when it comes to filming complaints. I've resolved very few problems that people have had with them. But so I don't want it to look like it's because we're getting funding from them, right? So that's been one of my big problems, but
Costs for the users.
Yeah.
If it's not working out anyway, I mean, might as well take some cash.
Right.
yeah.
They're gonna give it to someone. For the 30,000.
As long as it's not the people.
Oh, I feel so much better now. This is to be continued. And thank you, Christopher, for like being, thanks in advance for the work you're going to do. And
It's a good
being a good
mechanism.
counselor.
It's volunteer.
Yeah.
Cool. Now we can be done.
Well, almost.
I mean,
Yes, yes.
now I can shut up.
Well,
How's that?
hilarious. And so now we are on to the next part of our agenda, which is the district manager performance review. And so basically, this is the part where any feedback that folks have for the district manager, this is one of the avenues to do it in. Like, of course, I'm not saying this is the only one. Like Sean mentioned, the office is here. We've all seen her at board meetings and also like emails or whatever like that, right? And then like anything, any feedback that folks have, all I ask as usual, be respectful, and that's that. So, yes.
I just want to say, continue to do a great job you've been doing over the years, and I appreciate it.
Rasheen?
Yes, sometimes people join something because they want to change it, like when I signed up to be an election monitor, after I was so disturbed by my voting experience year after year. Actually, it's just the opposite, that I signed up for CB14 because of how impressed I was as a constituent, as just someone who would attend meetings, as a, I don't know what you call it, layperson, civilian, non-member, et cetera, that I was like, I just want to be part of it, partially to show my appreciation, put my own, skin in the game, whatever it is. So I just wanted to say that I've been just so impressed with your dedication, knowledge. When you don't know, you find out, and I've just been so impressed with you, Sean, over the past year as someone not on the board, that it really impacted my decision to join, which was fresh to join. So.
Thanks, Jean. And I'm not, I'm not praise seeking because constructive criticism is more than welcome. And I appreciate the comment. But new members should know, I serve at the pleasure of the board. You all can fire me and don't even have to give me a reason. So recently, and I'm just gonna call out the borough president because this was so troubling to me. Like, I was given something and told not to share it with the chair, and I shared it with the chair, and then and when I got asked about that, I actually didn't notice that I wasn't supposed to, and it just seemed so automatic to me. So I said, I serve at the pleasure of the board. Our bylaws dictate that my direct supervisor is the chair. I'm not going to not share something with the people on whom I depend for this job. So, but you should know that I try to think very hard about the fact that I'm representing 50 people and that hopefully 50 people are turning around and representing this board positively, to your greater communities. I take that seriously. And I'm going to share whatever with the chair, because I just can't imagine saying, like, don't tell your boss, but this is something that's, germane to your job. So.
Yeah, and Sean and I talk all the time, so I tell her, oh, like, if they get mad, then tell them to tell me.
But that is another thing, because, not everybody has always been very happy with exactly what I've said and the way I've said it and what I've done. And they have brought those concerns. Most of the time, I feel like I've got so much mutual respect with all of you that comes directly to me when we talk about it. The few times that it's went, if it has to go over my head, if you're not comfortable, or if it's just so egregious, talk to Carl, please. Trust me, he's very willing to, bring concerns and criticisms to my attention. And if you can't do that, I don't know what to, I guess you go to the borough president's office. But try to resolve it within, when you can.
What happens in community board reports, should stay in community.
What we should
board
do,
meetings.
we should make a
We don't
t-shirt and sell that.
go out.
Proceeds and the friends of the
Outside.
community.
I like.
See where I'm going?
Yeah, Nikki,
Yeah,
I have a quick, sorry,
you don't even apologize, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you for all being, I love that we have a coloring corner. This is
Oh, right.
It's hilarious.
I have a question, again, I've been absent for 2 years.
Yeah.
I remember when there was a conversation about performance work, like it was specifically for you, Sean, for the staff and how performance reviews were done. And I just wanted to, like, at that time, in my job, I work with boards around the world, and like, it's very common for a board to say, you know what, we've literally never done like a one-on-one performance review for our main staff person, right? And so I just wanted to know, because it's great that we can give you feedback this way. However, like from a HR perspective, this is a crazy way for an individual to receive feedback on their performance. I'm saying this mainly from you're awesome in defending you. Like, is there like a HR framework in which, not in an open forum like this, you and the staff, the CB14, receive regular feedback from the board? Because like, for instance, in my job, right, like I have a quarterly check-in with my boss, I have an annual review. So that's my question. And I remember sort of when Alvin was transitioning from being the longtime chair, and there were going to be other chairs. There was some meeting, I cannot really remember the context, where we talked about that would probably be a good and healthy idea for the staff.
I think that was the bylaws review, because I think we wrote district manager job review into the last bylaws update. And I think before that, it had never been done before, but it was something that I was seeking. I mean, probably from a point of feeling kind of confident about my relationship with the board, but also because I really think it's important to have. And the other thing is, like, we can always go, like, you could ask me to leave the room if you wanted to have, or the next time this happens, or anytime that you wanted to do a performance review without me here. that's something that could just take place.
But
But the
is
real,
performance review
this
as
is
a
it.
bylaw?
This is it.
Okay, and I would just like to say, like, mainly if I were you, this is not a great way for an individual professional to receive. This, I'm not trying to be like a difficult person, I just think this
No,
is like,
speak
like an odd way for a person to receive feedback. You're a very amazing person, but if I would feel so awkward receiving, I think my only moment to receive performance feedback during the year was in this format. It's
Yeah.
a bit of an odd
No,
one.
so if you want to, open to any discussion, whether I'm part of that discussion or not, for you to formalize something that's more ongoing or more formal. But also feel like I am inviting feedback, feedback is welcome year round. Benjamin?
No, I think just to, I guess, while we move this conversation along, we could always reach out to you directly. There's never any issue about that, or
Yeah.
we could reach out to somebody else privately, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be clear, I have absolutely no criticism. I'm just saying from.
No,
HR
I know what you're saying. I know it's a process, maybe, Christopher's done a lot of work with managing nonprofits too. So it might be something that maybe the two of you and Carl talk about if you felt like something less
Sure.
awkward or more formalized or more regular than once a year when I schedule it, is warranted. As far as, were you asking about my performance review of the staff? Because I know
No, in this
that,
case, it
yeah.
would be more just that,
just about me.
that if I were a staff person working at the pleasure of a board, for me personally, like I would. I think it's great that we can give you feedback in this format. I just feel like there's maybe another way, this plus something else. It's helpful. Yeah.
I would have no problem with whatever you decide you want to do as a board. I serve in your pleasure.
Any other feedback or comments from folks?
Listen, I've just been here for 2 meetings and already I can tell that she's been very supportive. I don't know how long you've been district manager, but 14 amazing years.
Yeah.
Even through COVID, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that warrants, clap.
Yeah.
And so I saw already, in the first meeting, how it got really rough and how supportive you were with the chair and kept everything in order and really professional. I observed that this board is being managed very well by the executive committee. And so I'm honored to be here and honored to get to know you more as we continue this work.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great community.
Mhm. It's a good one. Well-read board.
Look, and I'll say this too, it's not getting easier. Like usually the longer you've been in a job, the more you can kind of sit back a little bit and let it go on its own and rest on your laurels. There is none of that. The city is really hard right now. Our political climate is difficult. The functionality of the state is on a bumpy road, and the functionality, and I'm not even talking about one's politics, just the regular day-to-day administration of city agencies is rough. And so it's been difficult to address issues. Things that used to be simple are harder, and things that used to be hard are frustrating. So we're lucky to be in a community that really puts its heads to, and when things are, Rosine can speak to this too. When you're getting pushback on something that you see on a daily basis, your community needs, like, many of you have heard me say this, and those of you who haven't are gonna hear it now, and you'll hear it again and again. Persistence is my only superpower. It's the only one. So we just have to be persistent on what we think is needed in our community. And I think I said this to you many minutes, like, I'm not here to say that there should be a bike lane on this street or there shouldn't be a bike lane on that street. That's kind of the board's business. I'm here to facilitate the process and make sure that the people in the community feel heard. And not everybody gets what they want all the time, but they should feel that they were heard in their objection or their advocacy, and at least have a begrudging understanding of why the thing happened.
That's what I'm here for.
Yep. And I co-sign that because that's how I try to run the board meetings as well. Like I do have a tendency to let some public hearings go way longer than they should. Like I do, I know that's something I do, and no, it's an open secret. If I open secret, it's not a secret, right? But the reason I do that is because, yes, like I see it as my job to make sure that number one, the people who are there, yeah, I mean, whether or not they know if I agree with them or not, like, that's not important, right? What's important is that they know that, okay, when they speak, that I am listening to them. The executive committee is listening to them, that the other people are listening to them. And then whatever decision we come to as a board is because we've deliberated. And that's, for me, that's the most important thing, right? That like, whatever the vote is, when it's done, like whatever action we take is because that individual or those group of individuals are like, okay, however I feel about these people, I do believe wholeheartedly that they did listen. And they weren't just waiting for me to finish before they already made up my mind, right? Like, that's the main thing for me. It's about respecting the person and hearing them as opposed to just waiting for someone to do that. And I'm like, okay, I can finish now. No. So I try my best to run those meetings, not that way, but the way of like, oh no, like we're listening, we're processing. And also like healthy discord. Like, I don't run the board in a way where it's like, you gotta agree with me or not. No, like there's healthy discord, like people in this room have disagreed with me before. If disagreed in the open, it's not like, hush, this. No, they've done it before. And then I'm cool with that because it's healthy and we respect each other as individuals. And we know how to like we've disagreed on process, policy, whatever. But the point is we're human beings. And the way that I run the board is like, yeah, like we're adults, we're individuals. We can do that. Like we can disagree on process, we can disagree on policy. We can still come together.
Agree to disagree.
Exactly, right? So that's how I run those things. So I co-sign with the district managers. Go ahead, sir. Were you gonna say something? Or-
I was, but it's fine.
Okay, cool.
I was just agreeing, you know.
Okay, cool. I know you're gonna say something before I cut you.
Really do care to be heard. Know that they're at the end of the day. So that's, and I appreciate Sean for that and for not, for fighting for our community. You know, she will stand up as much as she welcomes and she deals with sanitation and our police department, but she also will call them out. Where's that right? So there's that.
I appreciate it. For those of you who are on the quieter side, cut it out. I mean, not now, not right this very second, but, you know, find your voices and, I'm gonna be heard. I wasn't looking at you. I was just.
So I think,
Shall we?
well, the last thing is other business. So, you know, I'm just gonna close other business how I started, game 5, X, I hope they do it. Hey, I started that, Don Marie, you came in, I already started. I know you shook your head like this, man. Yes, I did. So for other business, I'm putting all the good vibes out there. They're gonna need all the vibes, and that's it.
And then.
I mean, they're gonna need all the vibes. Like, they need a lot. So on that note, folks, I thank you so.
Where are they playing?
They're playing in my favorite part.
The backup.
Yeah, they need all of them.
Carl, you didn't train them well. They should never have lost.
They shouldn't have. They shouldn't have. Yeah, they did. That's because Tibbs plays the same 6 people and he acts surprised every time. But that's another story. We don't have a sports.
Unfortunately, he does not serve at the pleasure of.
Yeah, we don't have a sports committee. Otherwise, we could discuss it all the time. So folks, I thank you so much and.
Thanks.
Yeah.
everyone.